about 2010, people were starting to have interest in what we were doing here at Serenbe. It had gone from this crazy idea of creating a village in the woods to, hey, something was going on here. And everyone was wanting to put a tag on it. And so I was searching, who are we? And realized that biophilia was really the tag, because that connects all living systems, and that's what we're really doing here. And so then we formed the Biophilic Institute, primarily to be a thought leadership group that comes together, especially with a focus on policymakers and educators. And so then, talking with Tim Beatley of Biophilic Cities, we decided to launch this conference. And so this is the third year that we've done the conference. So the idea of this is to discuss among those people that are making the difference or have a potential to make a difference as to what they're doing and how it can connect the dots in other cities and other places.
I'm an urban planner, and I come at things from the point of view of looking at cities. And of course, we're in the midst of this remarkable global transformation and becoming profoundly more urban. And so with Biophilic Cities, what we believe is that nature needs to be at the core. It has to be at the center of design and planning. There are roles for everyone to play in this agenda, and that's what's interesting about the Serenbe conference, that we've got architects and designers, but we've got poets and writers, and we've got community activists, we've got citizens just sort of figuring out what this means to them in daily life, or what it means for their neighborhood or their building. So this is a really important meeting for energizing and getting inspired and kind of moving the agenda forward.
I think if we believe the science that human beings actually need nature, that it's not just an amenity, that it's actually a necessity, now I think the challenge is really how to provide that access for everyone. So I think we face a lot of social inequities, we face a lot of racial inequities and social justice issues. You could argue we are a little bit broken today. We are disconnected from the natural environment. Many of us are facing a lot of problems of modern life having to do with obesity, inactivity, diabetes, depression, anxiety, and on and on. And I think you could argue that a lot of those are diseases of the indoors. So I argue that we are living in the middle of the largest mass migration in human history. And it's the migration indoors. And yet we are not discussing it as much as we need to be.
Biophilia really is the human connection to nature, and what we're interested in is how do those experiences of nature impact people psychologically and physiologically. And so looking at the science of what happens in those experiences and then translate those into the built environment. Through our research of looking at different impacts and different experiences of nature, we developed a series of components or elements that we call a pattern language, 14 patterns of biophilic design, that are different ways you can experience nature in the built environment. Some of them are very direct, like seeing nature out your window, bringing plants, animals, water inside the building. So those are direct experiences of nature. Indirect experiences of nature are using natural materials, using forms and patterns that you find in nature in furniture and artwork and fabrics and all of that. And then finally, there are different spatial experiences that are really important when we're out in nature that elicit very strong responses. The ability to have a distant view, prospect. The ability to be in a place where my back is protected, which is called refuge. The intriguing thing that we're learning about the biophilic responses is that they are not necessarily rational. They are subconscious responses that happen way faster than conscious thought processing. And so this is where the whole science around what's called affordances and the way the brain responds to spaces and objects occurs. And so translating that into saying, okay, so based on that science, what does that tell us about the spaces we need to be creating to help people? And what we're really looking for is, can I do design that helps lower stress, that improves cognitive function, that improves people's mood, that makes for better well-being in the built environment?
I think the point of life, if you look throughout many wisdom traditions and philosophers, has always been to pursue and find a form of happiness. And when you look at the literature on happiness, it's not just about feeling good. It's about functioning well, and functioning well with a sense of purpose, belonging, that you're contributing things to your community, that you're confident to think and express your ideas and opinions, that you're accepting of yourself, but accepting of others, that version of happiness I think is rather rich and something very relevant for us today in this world, and one we need to reclaim, because I think when you hear the word happiness or flourishing, you think immediately about the smile and the feeling, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you don't put that together with a life where you have purpose and belonging and contribution, you're not flourishing. And all of our studies show you need that combination to lead a better life and to prevent mental disorders, among other problems. The rewards go to the curious. And nature in biophilia is just the most amazing place that just trains you to sort of be curious.
We used to be very connected to nature. We depended upon nature, and we still do, but we've forgotten that. And it's why, for instance, in the city of Atlanta, we're so excited to see a renewed focus on how nature is integrated into an urban and suburban environment, and why it's so necessary to pay attention to that and to nurture that and place emphasis on it. It's why the city has taken on this urban ecological framework analysis. And so the city of Atlanta is saying, this is really important for us. It's part of our DNA, and we need to make sure that we embrace that and then figure out how to really value that going forward. We recognize that this is a real opportune moment to really start using this field to create a better environment for all of us.
Atlanta has so many good examples. If you look at the stormwater at Fourth Ward Park above Ponce City Market, that's transitioned to what would have been an underground stormwater to an exposed bioretention, and now it's a public asset. So that's an example on how all cities can really use their stormwater infrastructure as a positive way to connect people to nature. The Beltline is a wonderful example of how just looking at an asset that's been there for years but abandoned, and that brings it together. The restoration of Proctor Creek now is going to connect the inner city out to the Chattahoochee River. A tremendous opportunity. So if we think about stormwater, how raindrops hit each house and each business, they have to find a route to our local streams and rivers. And if we started thinking about daylighting those areas, we would certainly have a network of green space throughout our metro areas. So I think our urban cities are just such a rich opportunity because some of that infrastructure is crumbling and we're going to have to redo it. Let's do it in a biophilic manner that really changes people's lives.
Life's too short to be creating spaces that impact you poorly psychologically and physiologically, right? It costs the same, so let's create spaces that make people happy and healthy and productive and reduce stress and improve cognitive performance and just make life better. As we're moving to a world where 70% of the people live in urban areas, this is a really important issue.
Here's the thing, we can adapt to so many circumstances, and we can adapt to not living in a place that's very comforting and joyful and embracing, but that's not a life worth living, in my opinion. So I think it's worthy of bringing nature into our urban lives.
We have a need for beauty, and we're learning actually more and more about the science of awe. Awe is a positive emotion that has been very understudied, and yet we know when we experience something sort of overwhelmingly beautiful, something that stops us in our tracks and surprises us in a way. So I'm fascinated by awe. I think it's something we don't think about very much in our lives, but it turns out that half the time that we experience awe, it comes from the natural world.